Hello and welcome to the Supportive Care Services virtual Lunch and Learn series. We've created a series of Lunch and Learn videos to help you be successful when navigating your cancer journey. Our Supportive Care Services department is here to help you get actively involved in your healing process. For more information about the Supportive Care Services department, please email socialwork@ironwoodcrc.com.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. My name is Jessica Wells, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker here at Ironwood Cancer and Research Center. I cover our East Valley offices, which include both of our Chandler offices, Gilbert, Mesa, and Dobson office. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you information about caregiving for your loved one who's going through a cancer diagnosis. So a caregiver, oftentimes you may ask, what is a caregiver? I hear a lot that people feel like they're not truly a caregiver, but a caregiver can be defined for this presentation as a person who provides important physical, practical, and emotional support to a person with cancer. So some things to consider as a caregiver. Number one, navigating those medical appointments as well as visitor restrictions. We're currently still in a COVID world, which has created some barriers to caregivers being present as they would normally with their loved one for appointments, treatments, etc. So some things to consider in regards to managing any visitor restrictions. Number one would be making sure that your loved one is able to communicate with their medical provider. The interest in you being present by phone, FaceTime, or some other technology-related means so that you can participate in the visit. Most often, providers, as long as you let them know that you want somebody to call in, FaceTime, etc., will accommodate this request. In instances where someone may not be familiar with FaceTime or have that capability or are not available for a three-way call, what other patients have done is they record the conversation as a voice note on their phone. Again, of course, letting the medical professional know that they are going to be recording and for what purpose, and then you can then disseminate the recording out. That's something that your loved one can send directly to you. Can we go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. So those are some ways that you can kind of navigate that same as well. However, if your loved one is experiencing or has any type of cognitive impairment or deficit, physical impairment that warrants the need for you to be present, please speak with your medical team to see about any type of exception that might be able to be granted to help ensure that your loved one is able to communicate with you and all of the information that you need in return. Some other things to consider is Family Medical Leave Act. If you're a caregiver that is also still working and you've been with your employer at least a year or more, you would want to speak to your human resources representative regarding your ability to go out on FMLA, essentially. There's usually a packet of paperwork that's included within this, and that paperwork can be provided to your medical provider's medical assistant, who can help assist in the completion of this. Please do understand, though, that this is not paperwork that can be completed same day, and sometimes does require at least a week to 2 weeks turnaround time. So please keep that in mind because these documents can be time sensitive, and you don't want to run into any issues if you turn in the paperwork the day before it's needed. It's likely it will not be able to be done within the shortened time frame just because doctors are in clinics during the day and not able to do that. So with FMLA, you have intermittent, which a lot of caregivers take, which means basically whenever day and time they need to take their loved one to treatment, appointments, etc. That's when they're off for work. And then if their loved one doesn't have any appointments, they're at work as usual. Something else is a HIPAA consent versus power of attorney. A lot of times these are used synonymously. So you as a caregiver can be listed on your loved one's HIPAA consent, but that does not make you the power of attorney unless you specifically have power of attorney paperwork. The HIPAA consent purpose is for employees here at Ironwood to be able to provide you with medical information about your loved one. So for example, if you want to call in and ask about a medication or when their next appointment is, or note any concerns, you would need to be listed on the HIPAA consent in order to do that. The power of attorney differs in that the power of attorney is a document in which your loved one identifies up to 2 people who can act on their medical behalf, should they be incapacitated for any reason. So the power of attorney does not supersede your loved one's wishes. I've seen this happen sometimes where a caregiver may disagree with the medical decisions that their loved one is making, and they try to pull the power of attorney card. Unfortunately, that does not work. If your loved one is cognitively intact at that time, they have to be incapacitated in order for the power of attorney to be utilized. Also, a lot of insurance companies, the vast majority, have what's called a nurse case manager that kind of work behind the scenes in regards to helping process prior authorizations, things of that nature. I always recommend that caregivers and patients contact their insurance company to ask for a nurse case manager to be assigned. That way you can have their contact information. The benefit of this would be, say you know that there's a prior authorization for a chemo medication or an oral medication that your loved one needs to take. You can then reach out to your nurse case manager, let them know the prior auth will be coming and to be on the lookout, and that can help expedite the process and therefore reduce some of the barriers that can often occur while waiting for a prior authorization to come through. So preparing for procedures and treatments, it can be very difficult, especially again, because you may not be able to be present with your loved one, to help prepare them for procedures and treatments. I would strongly suggest making a list of questions that you have ahead of time. It's always good. I usually recommend to keep a little notebook that you can document everything in. Have a list of questions so that you can go in knowing what to ask, or your loved one knows what to ask, and they can write down the answer. So then that way, if they don't remember after the fact, they have a book that they can reference, and you have a log as well of things that you can look to see if there's any important information you may need to have. It's nice sometimes for chemotherapy treatments if you can help your loved one pack some type of comfort bag. This could include, any items to help them pass the time, books, crossword puzzles, activities, things like that. Fuzzy socks, lemon drops can be helpful sometimes for taste. Ginger drops, peppermint, things of that nature that may help with anti-nausea. And of course, any type of food snacks. While there are snacks provided in the treatment rooms, if your loved one has a particular snack that they generally like, you are able to pack food items for them. That is something that is allowed. Also, it's important to ensure that you're understanding any post-surgical and treatment instructions. Again, a lot of times now in hospitals, you're not always able to be on site to speak with the surgeon following the procedure or the nurse. Making sure that you get all of the information you need about discharge instructions is helpful. For example, if someone has just undergone a double mastectomy, it's important to make sure that you as the caregiver have information in regards to how to care for their drains, manage those, etc. Same with chemo, making sure you have information about any potential signs and side effects that could occur, how to manage those, when to call nurse triage, when to take your loved one to the hospital. All of that information, having that is helpful. So some common questions that often come up from caregivers. Number one, what if my loved one needs more help? There are a few options in this regard. So number one would be if your loved one is also experiencing some deficits in their activities of daily living, which would be showering independently, getting up and down out of the bed, ambulating, using the restroom. If they start to have those types of issues or deficits, and you start to have concerns about that, you might want to look into whether or not they might qualify for what's called Arizona long-term care or LTACs. Your loved one would have to meet financial criteria as well as medical criteria to be eligible. But if they are eligible, they could essentially receive in-home nursing care on a daily basis. Sometimes it's up to 40 hours a week in addition to some respite care. If for some reason your loved one would not qualify for LTACs, then you could look at home care agencies. There are a wide variety of home care agencies that are out there to help with some of those things, some of the cooking, cleaning, nursing related things, bathing, etc. Which kind of goes in with the question, does my insurance cover an in-home caregiver? Unless your loved one has a specific long-term care policy, insurance does not cover in-home caregiving. I know that this is a common myth, and I hear quite often, oh, I have Medicare, Medicare will cover it. Unfortunately, they will not. Home care is different than home health, which would be a skilled nursing need essentially that your loved one might have. Like say if they had some type of wound that needed a dressing change or something like that. Another common question is, can I be paid to be a caregiver for my loved one? The answer is yes, if your loved one qualifies and has Arizona long-term care or LTACs. Your loved one would first have to apply, be qualified, and then you as the caregiver would have to undergo certain training to then be able to be their paid caregiver. So just something to keep in mind. I know sometimes caregivers often have to stop working or consider stop working to be more present at home with their loved one. And I always caution against this because there is no guarantee that they will be LTACs eligible or receive the service. Some common mistakes to avoid. A lot of time, we can all agree that when someone has been diagnosed with cancer, it can be one of the darkest moments in life. It can be very hard. It can be very difficult. I always encourage my caregivers to be empathetic rather than sympathetic. There's a difference. Cancer patients don't need your sympathy. Your loved one doesn't need you to feel sorry for them. What they do need is for you to support them in a way that's going to be most meaningful and honoring to and for them. So instead of, using a common euphemism like everything happens for a reason, or, so-and-so down the street has it worse, using more language of, I can't even begin to imagine how difficult this must be for you. How can I support you today? How can I show up for you today? What can I do for you today? Rather than policing them. And by policing, I mean a lot of times it's common for your loved one to experience some type of decrease in their appetite. Across the board, this tends to be probably number one concern that caregivers have in regards to their loved ones. A lot of times what happens then is there's almost this desire for the caregiver to want to force the loved one to eat. And that can look like, oh, you need to eat. The doctor said you have to gain weight. If you don't gain weight, you're not going to be able to do treatment. You want to do treatment, right? Those types of things, rather than offering maybe a variety of foods, making it available to your loved one and allowing them to access it on their own terms. There are taste challenges that arise as a result of someone going through chemotherapy. Food just doesn't taste as good as it did previously. This can be further exacerbated by your loved one utilizing metal cutlery. The metallic taste can be magnified if your loved one is using traditional cutlery. So maybe you're helping them by using plastic cutlery is something that can help minimize some of that awful taste that they might experience. But allowing your loved one to kind of guide their care rather than forcing something on them, asking what would be helpful to you today. Would you like me to cook you something? Or just saying, hey, I cooked, and make 2 options and let them know it's in the kitchen on the stove if you would like to get it. Or I'll put an Ensure right here next to you in the event that you want it, rather than saying, here's this Ensure, you need to drink it, the doctor says you need to drink it, et cetera, et cetera. Those types of behaviors can change the dynamic between you and your loved one, and that can be difficult. Something else to avoid is the kind of going back with the common euphemisms is the just be positive. And a lot of times that is offered by caregivers, outside family, friends, etc., as something that is meant to be hopeful and something that their loved one can kind of hang their hat on, if you will. The unfortunate part about this is that it often results in loved ones feeling as though their experience is being minimized. And it can come across as, oh, your comfort as a caregiver is more important than what your loved one is truly feeling. In turn, what happens, a lot of loved ones then default to, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine, because they don't want to upset you. So rather than, oh, just be positive, recognizing that your loved one having a bad day is still them being positive, allowing them to just experience what it is that they truly are can be helpful. Things to remember: cancer is a chronic condition. I know that a lot of people do not know this or realize this, but it truly is. And cancer does not stop once your loved one completes treatment. There are still a variety of labs, scans, medical appointments, and other follow-up your loved one will be required to participate in. So it does not stop for them. And a lot of times what happens is once loved ones have stopped treatment, they can feel as though some of their supports are gone away and are falling by the wayside. And keeping in mind, there may be some lingering side effects your loved one is still experiencing. They still may have fatigue for a significant period of time post-treatment. They may still experience some neuropathy that impacts their ability to walk, impacts their ability to pick things up, etc. So keeping that in mind and extending them some grace, and trying to avoid comments such as, oh, you look fine, you're not going through treatment anymore, why are you so tired? Understanding it's going to take a while for your loved one to recover from that. And even once they are recovered, their activity and energy level may not be the same as what it was prior to that. So if you can understand that cancer is a chronic condition, that can help your loved one kind of adjust post-treatment as well too. This one is really hard to accept sometimes, but remembering you are not in control. We often say, hey, you're not the one that's driving the bus, which can be very hard because as a caregiver, it's a difficult job. You want to ensure that your loved one does well in treatment and has the optimal environment in which they can participate and engage in treatment. And it can be hard when your idea of what that looks like differs from your loved ones. Quality of life looks different for everybody. And if you find that you're maybe struggling with that, or if you and your loved one are having some difficulties, maybe engaging them in a conversation about quality of life and what it means to and for them, that will help you know as well too. And then also remembering there's supports that are available for your loved one. Ironwood has a robust supportive care services department that offers, we have dietitians, there's social workers, there's also different classes such as chair yoga, tai chi, meditation, all sorts of different things that are out there and available to help your loved one feel better supported, and also different activities and classes that they can do to help them achieve some type of balance. If you find that you're needing additional support as a caregiver, we would love to have you join our caregiver support group. It's held the third Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Right now it is being held by Zoom. So if you're interested in participating, you'll definitely want to make sure that you send an email over to wellness@ironwoodcrc.com. Or you can give the Supportive Care Services Department a call at 480-314-3440.
Thank you for joining us for our virtual Lunch and Learn series. We hope you enjoyed this session. There will be a replay of this Lunch and Learn on the Ironwood YouTube and social media channels. For more information regarding our supportive care services classes and events, email us at wellness@ironwoodcrc.com. Thank you for spending time with us today.